No problem.
Hello and good morning, and welcome to our interview today. We will be starting momentarily. We're having a small technical glitch, and I just ask you to hold on, but we will be starting momentarily. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. We'll be starting soon. Hello, and thank you for bearing with us. We are just trying to get our streaming capacity going, and we will be commencing shortly. Thank you very much.
Hello, Chinwe.
Good morning, Aisha.
Good morning. I'm so sorry it took such the internet trying to get things together. Apologies, please, to everyone.
Oh, no problem. I was made to understand that we wanted to stream it on yet another social media channel. So
I'm working on.
yes, that
I'm
makes
still
sense.
trying to get the hang on of it. Can you see me properly?
I can see you. Can you see me?
Fantastic. Yes, I can.
Okay.
So I'm streaming on my. Oh my, this is so close. What's happening?
I thought you have so many devices going, so that
exactly,
just so that you
that's
can.
it. I have a lot of devices going on, and I'm wondering why is this like this? Okay, is this better? Oh no, what happened? Oh, sometimes technology just sort of. Apologies, everyone. I'm actually streaming on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I just.
Oh wow!
Last minute, this thing it's a bit crazy over here, and I just don't know why my phone is deciding to have a life of its own. Okay. I hope this works. I'm actually feeling as frazzled as I did on the 30th of April 2014. I mean, everything was just papa. You needed to and
there's something with the day.
Now I am. So I'm live on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
All right. Okay. Well, we're good to go, as they say. So let's get going. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, those of you who are joining us. I am Dr. Chinwe Madubike, and I am here. I have the distinct honor, pleasure, joy to, and a bit of soberness to sit down with a compatriot, a sister, a comrade, a colleague, an associate, anything and everything. Many of you need no introduction to Hajia Aisha Yesufu. And what we're doing today is commemorating the 7th year since the 7th year of the commencement of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. As many of you know, April 14th, 2014, 276 girls were abducted by Boko Haram terrorists in Chibok, Borno State. For those of you who are watching internationally, Chibok is a small town in Borno State, northeast Nigeria, and 276 girls were abducted. Well, 2 weeks later, a movement commenced, and we'll get into the details of that in a moment. On April 30th, concerned citizens, both men and women, gathered at Unity Fountain, a central meeting point in Abuja, Nigeria, to raise their voices, to collectively mourn, to agonize, and to begin to strategize a movement on getting the Chibok girls back to safety. And fortunately, Hajia Aisha Yesufu was there on April 30th. And so we're having a citizens engagement. That's the theme today. It's a citizen engagement, the journey of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. So on the 14th, you had the abductions, but on the 30th of April 2014, you had the movement. And it's been 7 long years. And there's no better person really to begin to tell us about that than Hajia Aisha Yesufu herself. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much. Hajia, you are welcome. Thank you so much for doing the heavy lifting with getting all the streaming going and just for being a consistent voice and being present today. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stingway. Thank you so much, my sister. It's a pleasure being with you always. We've gone through this journey together, the tears, the pain, the anguish, and it's really sad that 7 years after we are still here.
It's very, very sad. So and what people need to know, for those who may have forgotten, let's just go back to the genesis. Let's go back to the beginning. Like I said earlier, we're marking the 30th. The 30th marks the birthday of, if you will, of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. And I have so many questions for you, Aisha, even though, like you said, we've gone through this together, but I know that people want to know 7 years later. There are a number of things that people want to know. First of all, let me say a few things to preface our conversation, because what this really is, it's an interview, but it's a conversation between you and I, and between us and citizens. As members of the movement, I just happen to be in a fortunate position to be able to ask the questions today. So on April 14th, as I said, under the presidency of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, because I think it's important for people to remember that there are 2 administrations that we have journeyed with, if you can call it that. There was an abduction. And on April 23rd, a few things happened. Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, the co-founder of the movement, was at an event commemorating the World Book Day in Port Harcourt, and issued a call to bring back our daughters. And at around that same time, somebody who was watching tweeted, yes, bring back our daughters. In fact, he's a lawyer, Ibrahim Abdullahi, tweeted, bring back our daughters, bring back our girls. And Dr. Obi Ezekwesili said, let that be let us begin to use the hashtag. Yeah. She was the one who called to use that as a hashtag to bring back our girls. And so the Twitter movement, or the social media movement, actually started on the 23rd, whereas the physical movement started on the 30th. So from what I understand that happened, and you can chime in from your perspective, because this is what this is all about. This is your perspective on what happened. Hajia Hadiza Bala Usman noticed that there was nothing coming from the president or the presidency at the time, and sent out an email to a number of women, especially from what I recall, and asked that people convene at Unity Fountain on the 30th. And that is what we know gave rise to the movement, Bring Back Our Girls. There was the abduction, the hashtag, the social media movement, and then the physical ground movement. So Hajia, let's start at the very beginning. And I'm sure people want to know, you've probably said this before in some of your interviews, but tell us today, not about the commencement of the movement. Where were you when you learned that the Chibok girls had been abducted? Let's start there, because that's what this is all about.
Many times I've been asked that question specifically. I'm unable to answer it because right now I can't even remember exactly where I was when I heard about the Chibok girls' abduction. But I can tell you the feelings within those moments.
Good, because that's the next question.
Yes. So I remember hearing about the abduction, and this just being perplexed. How did you get to this place where schoolgirls are being abducted? And one of the things for me at that time, like my husband would always talk about me, he says there's Aisha before 2014 and Aisha after 2014. Aisha before 2014 was one who didn't really bother about news. I didn't like to listen to news and hearing the things coming out of Nigeria and all of that. And so when I just, that news sort of like trickled into me, girls had been abducted. I was like, okay, what's going on here? And then within a few days, the military said that all had been rescued except for 8. And I was like, oh, okay, we will get our 8 back. Is it not, that belief and trust in the Nigerian military and the Nigerian government that indeed we're going to get all our daughters back. And so I continued. I wasn't even on social media at that time, only Facebook that I went to maybe once in 2 years. And so when that whole thing happened, just going away and feeling good that, they will all be back. And on the 30th of April, I was at the gym, and that I can remember precisely. I can even see the picture of that. I think for me, the whole thing started on the 30th of April, 2014. And so being at the gym and just staying there after we had walked out, and so a friend of mine walked to me, I was like, oh, there's going to be a protest for Chibok girls, for the girls, not for the girls that were taken. I was like, the girls that were taken away, I thought they had all been brought back. The military said that they, except 8, and in the next few days they were going. And she said, no, they hadn't been brought back. And so for me, and she said, there's going to be a protest. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be there. And so that was for me, was the beginning. And I called my husband immediately and I said to him, there's going to be a protest for the girls that were taken away. And I would like to be there. I was like, okay, go ahead. And so I asked my friend, what's the color of what's the color code? And she said red. And I absolutely didn't have any red hijab because I don't do red. It's such a bright color. And so from that moment, I just took myself, I drove all the way to Wuse Market, and I started looking for a black hijab. And normally I wear my hijab all the way down. I couldn't find any. And so what I did was to buy abaya, this long flowing black clothes, and I had a bit of knee-length hijab, and I wore that on. For me, just before I'll just take us back to what happened in February of 2014 when the BBOG boys were killed. And I remember sitting with my husband and just while he was watching TV, I just sat with him and I saw in the news where they said there had been a protest for them. I said to my husband, if I had known about that protest, I would have been there. And so when I heard of this one, I was okay. Instantly, I was at the Unity Fountain that day.
Very interesting. It's very hard for many of us to talk about Chibok girls without going back to Buniyadi, because that was the first alarming, egregious attack on a secondary school. I happened to be at that protest. I didn't know about the protest because I was just in a car and I saw people marching in black. I just saw them gathered at Unity Fountain and they were leaving Unity Fountain. And I jumped, I said, stop the car. Those are the people. I know that somebody must be doing something about Buniyadi boys, because we were all waiting. Remember that Buniyadi happened at the same time that Nigeria was celebrating its 100th year of amalgamation. It was our centenary. So there were dignitaries in from other countries. They were gathered in Abuja and people were expecting, okay, there's going to be at least a moment of silence during those events. Not one word. And so many people that I've spoken to who weren't able to make Buniyadi, or because the Buniyadi boys were dead, there was nobody to bring back, really felt the same way that you did, that no, 30th, you're not going to miss it. You had to be there. You had to be there. Thank you for that. So the next question is, what was that? And I know, like I said, some of these questions you would have heard before, but it's 7 years. We have the benefit. We shouldn't have the benefit of 7 years hindsight, but we do. Looking back 7 years, what was that day like for you? Yeah. You went to, you've just taken us through, you were at the gym, you were
Yeah,
minding your business, doing your
exactly.
thing, doing your routine, and then you headed down to Wuse Market, got something to wear. What hit you as soon as you started approaching Unity Fountain? What was your first impression?
I'm getting so emotional just thinking about that day and the fact that we are still here and doing this. We shouldn't be talking about, Chibok girls still being in captivity, 112 of them, 7 years after.
Mm-hmm.
So as
Mm-hmm.
soon as I went to Wuse Market, bought my red hijab and my black abaya, drove straight to the house. So it was supposed to be at 3 p.m. in the around the time that was given, a bit of afternoon, if I remember. So I got changed, everything, waited, and I drove back. And lo and behold, I didn't even know where Unity Fountain was. I'm very poor with geography. I've been in Abuja for like 3 years then, and I didn't know where it was. So I parked my car somewhere else, and I took a cab. And I asked him, I said, I'm going, this is the address. I didn't even know it was close to Hilton or opposite Millennium Park. And we went there, and we saw there were so many people there, people writing. So I just dropped out of the car, didn't know anybody, walked into it. And there were a lot of people. You could see the pain. And, they were writing on cardboards. They had all sorts of things, just standing there and just looking around and just waiting for the march. And guess what happened? The clouds started gathering. There was such huge cloud everywhere. And some people actually started going away. So people had started leaving. There were people later on, we found out, that were on their way to the protest, but because when they saw those clouds gathering, they felt the protest wouldn't go on. And it was really major clouds. And when people were walking away, I remember Dr. Obiozor standing up and just saying that, are we salt? Are we going to melt if we march in this rain? Do we know what is happening to our daughters? And that sort of like charged people, and you were ready to go on. And then it actually by the time we marched, it actually started raining. The rains were something else. I in my little, sometimes I sit down and I'm a bit angry at Dr. Obiozor. I'm like, when you're trying to, what they say, transfer aggression, right? I'm just thinking that, why didn't she just tell us on that day that we should just march to Sambisa Forest? We were ready to march to Sambisa Forest. We would have marched there to bring back our daughters. I mean, sometimes I'm thinking about, maybe if she had just done that call, we all would have decided that we're going to bring back our daughters ourselves, and we wouldn't be here doing this 7 years after. And so walking all the way, we walked down to the National Assembly. The leadership of the National Assembly came down, and that was the time of David Mark, Senate President David Mark, and Speaker Aminu Tambua. And when we met there, they came out in the rains too. And when we heard the parents were talking, it was just tears that day. Tears and tears, so much wailing, so much anguish. I mean, just recalling it now, I find it extremely painful just thinking about that day. And then when we were all sort of done with the National Assembly, they said they had heard us. The reception was quite good. I must tell you, on that day at the National Assembly, they heard our message, they felt the pain, they were in the rains with us, they said they were going to work on it. And the leader of the Chibok community in Abuja, Mr. Ozias Sambido, knelt down in the rain when we got back, knelt down in the rain and said, please, don't leave us alone. You know the way Nigeria is, we move on from this issue. So after we had finished all of that, we marched back to the Unity Fountain, and it was like, don't leave us alone in this. We're going to, if you go away, they will forget about us. And that was the day. So what was organized initially was a one-day protest. So when I see people talking about the fact that, people wanted to come out, no, it was supposed to be a one-day protest. And I tell you, Chinwe, if that day anybody had told me that 7 years I'll be doing this, I wouldn't have stayed. I would have walked away. It's, when your life is on hold for 7 years, it's not something that is funny. I see people who come and say all sorts of things to us. I'm going to be emotional. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to cry.
This is the time. This is the time.
It's annoying. We put our lives on hold. Everything stopped. Every day coming back. I've been wearing these two things for 7 years. 7 years. In May, it's going to be 7 years. Chinwe, I'm not supposed to be wearing this for 7 years. Sometimes I'm having intimate moments with my husband. If this thing is scratching him, I could feel it. I'm not supposed to be wearing this thing, but because girls were taken away, we all are parents, we have children. We marched back that day. And in that moment, people said, we are not going to move away. We remember Dr. Obi standing up and say, this is what they're begging us to do. Are we going to come? And we said, yes, we will keep coming every day as long as it takes. And I tell you, none of us thought that this thing would be more than 2 weeks. When I started, when we gave us this thing, one of them had this thing written on it, right? It had BBOG all over. The other one didn't. And we needed a printer to get that done. I went to look for a printer. And guess what happened? When I went there, the printer said that it's going to take 2 weeks for the thing to be done. And I said to the printer, we don't have 2 weeks. We only here for a few days because the girls will all be rescued in 2 weeks. How can something that was supposed to happen within a week, we are still here 7 years after,
7 years.
We are still talking, and we have administration, we have people who are coming, people who are saying, who are saying that, oh, did the abduction happen? We have government who made it a campaign mantra, and today they are silent because it's not their children that are being taken away. It's really not fair. That's not the way life should be in any country, and we deserve better.
Absolutely, absolutely. I understand. I understand the emotion, and I understand. We will get to the administrations in a minute. For those who don't know, yes, it's been 7 long, agonizing years. For those who don't know and who've been asking, because 7 years, so much has changed in Nigeria, not only the administration, but so much has changed. I don't want to get too far ahead of the interview in this discussion, but can you describe to people, because we've seen protests come and go since Bring Back Our Girls. Okay, we've seen protests come and go, and I'm sure you've been asked. I know other members have been asked. How did it go from? Now you've told me what precipitated the movement to move beyond the first day, the 30th. So the next day is May 1st. Then there's May 2nd, May 3rd. What were those? How did it go from a protest to a movement? What happened on those early few days that made it, as organized as it has been, as for instance, you are here not just because you're Hajia Aisha Yesufu, you've held positions in the movement, and people have asked me, I'm sure they've asked you, well, how did you guys get to that? When because you see all of this emotion, palpable emotion. Many of us who are watching on TV, who were looking at the newspapers, looking at social media to see what's happening. What is the response? Is anybody doing anything about these girls? Is anybody doing anything about our daughters? People wonder, how did it go from one day to what it is now? Can you just zoom in on that?
Okay, so on that 30th, Dr. Obi, I remember her standing and really asking, do you understand what this meant? I think she had the knowledge and inkling of what it meant to be committed. And I think most of us, maybe a lot of them, were just like being the emotion, the anger, the sadness, the pain, the grief. We're acting on that. And she wanted us to, she asked 3 times, do you know what this means? It means we'll come out every day until all the girls are brought back, all the girls are accounted for. And we're like, yes, we're ready to. And so that was the birth of the movement. From a protest, a one-day protest, it became a movement. And so it was said, okay, we to come back the following day. So on that, the following day, members came out and they started working on the teams and strategy. So that was why there was this strategic team, and then a strategic team, resource team, media team, legal team. They were all put together, and people joined the different teams, whatever it was that you felt we were going to be good at, and that was the beginning of it. And one of the things that I know, I must say, for me, leadership of Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, I mean, you can't. Oh gosh, I'm like, if not. I'm not trying to farm her or something. I'm never one to farm person. If not for her, we wouldn't be where we are today. She brought in that strategic leadership. and stayed on. So when all of that were formed that first day, people went in. The third day, we came again. So we were now working on the different teams that we were at. I was in the resource team. And then in the strategic team, we had people like, that was the strategic team of the movement is where the decisions are made. I will come to that later. And then there's a sit out that will always vet the decision. So there was a perfect democracy at the Bring Back movement. They will make the decision, they will come, we will decide whether what they have made is okay or not. I will put our changes forward, and we'll also put forth ideas and solutions. And so that strategic team was made of Dr. Obi Hadiza Bala Usman, Hajia Saudatu Mahdi, Hajia Mariam Uwais, Dr. Jibo. Dr. Jibo was there, and then also there was Male Yusuf, Bashir Yusuf, all on that team, and it started that way. So that was where the movement started. One of the things that I forgot to mention is the fact that on that 30th of April 2014, after the whole march, I walked up to Dr. Obi Ezekwesili and I said to her, and I hugged her, and I can't remember whether I asked even whether I should hug her or something, and I just held her and I said to her, thank you for making me believe in Nigeria, because I grew up hating Nigeria. All the corruption, all the kind of things that were happening in our country were in things that I was really happy about, especially when you come from a poor background and you're practically being cancelled in your own nation. So I hugged her and I said, thank you for making me believe in Nigeria. And so, of course, we continued back to the third day. And I just had to mention that I realized I hadn't. Back to the third day, we started working on those things. And then
let me just interject, just for people to know. Well, that was the first day that you had met Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, on the 30th of April?
Yeah, that was the first day I met her. I had seen her once physically at an airport. I was traveling out of the country, and then I just saw her personally.
There's a bit of freezing.
Like, oh, okay, that's a lady. And let me tell you something, ironically, up to act on its own. So please, okay, so sorry. It just, so I had seen, I didn't even, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes, you're clear.
Okay, fantastic. So I didn't even know her name until that day.
Wow.
Remember, I told you I shot out of Nigeria. I was somebody who, for the first 40 years of my life, I shot my mind out of Nigeria. I needed to survive. I needed to get out of the poverty that I found myself, growing up in. And so focus was on myself and the people immediately around me, working on my financial independence. And most of the people in government, I didn't even know them. Although from time to time, I saw some of her policies and I liked some of the things that she was doing and all of that, but I didn't even know her name. I would always say that, oh, the lady with the low cut. So for me, it was that day. And I hugged her and I said to her, thank you for making me believe in Nigeria. And if there's any one person that I make another person believe in Nigeria, the way she made me believe in Nigeria, just seeing her that day, the passion she brought onto to the issue of the Chibok girls, for me, I'll really be grateful for that in life.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I know that was the first of many hugs. Because one of my titles for you is Hugger in Chief. We know you as a sit-out coordinator. You've also been the chair of the strategic team. You've been a co-convener, but one of my titles for you is Huggers in Chief. In fact, if we have time, I'll show some pictures of you hugging from I think the earliest hug that I witnessed was I think it's May 7th, because that day was the day I came from Ireland. The movement there were protests there to Nigeria, and I saw you hugging somebody, and I took a picture, and that was the first of many pictures of you hugging. If I can,
I actually hug with my heart. I say to people, I hug with my heart. So when I'm holding somebody, if I'm not in tune, any hug I give, it comes from the heart.
Well, you have a big heart because you've given many hugs, and all of us who have received the hugs have received that part of your heart, and that has helped sustain many of us because there were so many tears at Unity Fountain, and you were always. I think people need to know that, because we see you with the mic, we see you in their faces, but what people don't know is that you would be there before everybody, rain or shine, and you would greet with a hug. When people would come distressed, when people didn't hear, when there was just a dearth, absence of news, nothing being said, we would come with tears, with anger, and you would just from, I know with me, your hands would be as soon as you saw me, like from across the street, your arms outstretched, and there was a hug. And I know I'm not the only one, so I just want to point out that first day that you asked to hug Dr. Obi was the beginning of your title of hugger in chief, because that love has really strengthened so many people at Unity Fountain, and even beyond Unity Fountain, and we'll go into that in a bit. So you were talking about, sorry, the technicality of the third day, but I think that people need to see that the range of emotions has been anchored by the strategic planning that went on. There's the thinking. We moved with our heads, but we also moved with our hearts. So please tell me a bit more about that head movement. You were talking about on the third day. You've talked about the team. What happened on that third day? Because I remember some tweets going out on that third day. I have a tweet from Florence, who's the current chairperson, going out that day. I don't know why I still had that day. So I want to hear about that third day. What was going on that day?
So on that third day, so we were put in separate teams to talk about the different things that we're going to do. I was in the resource team. And one of the things that we're talking about in that resource team was, okay, how are we going to raise money, what we would need to do to amplify the whole issue, put out billboards. I mean, we're raising some of these fantastic things of, looking at resources, getting money and all of that. And by the time we came in with all of our presentation, and I think one of the things that Dr. Obi Ezekwesili said then was, look, guys, we don't need money. We don't need money. And we're like, looking at her like, excuse me, man.
Hello.
How are we going to do this without money? How are we going to be heard? And she said, we must put our monies where our monies where our empathy are. We cannot get anybody funding us or anybody bringing in money or us collecting donations from anyone. And I think it made the difference of Bring Back Our Girls movement. And that's why we are here 7 years after. We are self-funded. We are the ones who gave every bit of ours towards the movement. I'm sorry, there's no like typical Nigerian story. My ACs haven't worked. So and then for us, that was it. All the beautiful plans that we're putting together, how to raise money, how to get people to donate, that was the end of it. And she explained, and we got to understand her point of view. And so we rested that we had other things. Every of the team, they brought out what they had to do. We didn't like the name committee, because I remember they said that, oh, government always form committees and nothing ever gets done. So I Bring Back Our Girls movement. Committee was like a taboo word.
Exactly.
The instructive thing about that day was that on that day was the day that we were discussing the citizen solution to end terrorism. So Dr. Obi Ezekwesili had on Twitter, gathered, when all this insurgency was going on, people were being killed anyhow. And, the killings, the death, most of them weren't even reported in the news. And she had started putting that, ask citizens to collate what are the solutions, proper solutions that we can have. And so on that day, those items, they were discussed, the citizen solution. And I still have a copy here of the BBOG.
I remember it.
Solution that we put together, printed, gave out, and so many 10 solutions, what the government needed to do. So on that day, that third day was the day that was done. And then we continued on that. Every time we come, the different, the legal team, the media team, everyone had the thing they were doing, strategic team, and we continued with that on the issue of how it became the movement that it was. And any decision that was made based on strategy. We didn't just make decision anyhow. We didn't just wake up, okay, this, no. There had to be a strategy behind it. What are we doing? Not just to just act emotionally. And that's why I think we came from just being a mere protest into being a movement that has been able to stay on 7 years after.
That's amazing. I think just to contextualize a bit, people may be wondering, why did we think about those different teams so early? Remember that this was, I think people back home need to remember that this was a global issue, and the media was the media already landing in those first few days? Because I know I saw them outside of the country when we did the protest in Dublin. Did you have the same media? Because, and by the time I came on the 7th day, I came back home for this, but by the time I came, there was media everywhere. So would you say that they were there? Were they there on the 30th of April, on the 1st of May, the 2nd of May, the 3rd of May? Was it that heavy with the media presence that we needed a media team? What were we anticipating in terms of legalities and things like that? You know, what people would say, you guys were too organized too early. Do you have an insight to that to share?
Okay, so my network froze a bit, but I think
Yeah,
I
I
got
saw
what
that.
you were trying to ask. I think one of the things that people need to understand is the fact that this was a movement that was made up. It wasn't just random people just. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, you were freezing a bit, but
Okay, so
you're
it
good.
wasn't just random people just coming out to work. We had professional people. We had somebody
Mhm.
who was former World Bank VP, some people who had been in civil society movement. Dr. Obi has been in civil society movement for like over 30 years, I believe.
Mhm.
Right
Mhm.
from the young professionals during Abacha's time and all of that, the
Mhm.
Dr. Jibo, I had just Saudatu Mahdi, you know, so they sort of like when we said we were going to do, even though the rest of us, and I'm going to tell you, I'm part of those who really didn't understand what it was. And for me, I was a businesswoman who was focused, minding my business, like you did say, I was in the gym when all of this was dropped on my lap, coming into the civil society world, which I had never been part of. But they had that knowledge and they knew that things
Mhm.
needed to be done. It's not just to come randomly. We have to do things. And over the years at the Bring Back Our Girls movement, we've done quite a lot of things in terms of not just coming out. People think that we just come out like,
Precisely.
Toye Okupewa said that, oh, we only come out to drink Coke and eat crackers. That was what he thought. He didn't realize we were coming out to advocate for the lives of Nigerians, for the lives of children that were taken away. So with all of that, those strategy early on, and
Right.
of course there was media that day. There were media around, but basically the teams and all of that wasn't mainly because of the media. It was just the kind of leadership that we have. And I tell you
Right.
something, leadership is everything. We saw it at the Bring Back Our Girls movement.
I think that's important because people wonder, you know, why do other protests start up, fizzle out after 3 days? Why are they so, you know, they are lifeless? And I think this point is crucial to remember that there were veterans of
Yeah.
citizens engagement who met at Unity Fountain on April 30th and continued and started shaping the direction of the movement. Along with what I find very interesting is that, like yourself, you were a businesswoman before you came. You know, you're doing all of that. So there was this potpourri, if this melange of different types of people. One thing that struck me when we came is when I came was the presence of displaced and relatives of tortured people, of the victims already. That was because I think people think, oh, it was just, and we'll get to this in a minute, it was a repository of information because there was so much information from the Chibok community who were present every single day. Without them, I'm not even sure how, as strategic as many people were, they really fed into the detailing of this is what's going on back in Chibok. This is what's going on back in Bornu. Do you remember some of that? You know, hearing straight from the sources themselves. You know, right there at Unity Fountain. What were some of those stories that you know?
It was such a painful moment being at the Unity Fountain. Remember, I said, there was blackout on the media. News from the Northeast weren't being spoken about. They were not being reported. And it was to bring
Precisely.
back our Girls movement that brought the atrocities of what was happening in the Northeast to the fore in the nation and to the world, to say, look, a genocide is actually going on here in this part of the country.
Precisely.
People were being killed and nothing was being done about it. There were different stories coming in of how people were killed and the kind of gruesome way they were being killed, because the terrorists were actually slitting people's neck in front of their families. Husbands are killed in front of wives and children. Parents are killed in front of children. And you were being told of how the different ways people were being killed. I think I still remember the story of the woman who was killed, a pregnant woman who was, I think I tweeted about it in those days. She was pregnant and her baby was halfway out of her body when she was killed. And he was coming out not fully into the world, still half out of the world, half in the mother's womb, and the mother was killed. And so these stories were so painful. And you talk about the pain that the parents were going through, hearing the story of the father who said that his daughter was driven away because of 300 naira, and he had to work for several days to be able to get the money. And when he took his daughter back to school, his daughter was taken away. Imagine hearing a father saying that. The story of the man who said that he didn't even have a TV. He only has radio, that it's when he goes to his friend's house that he'll be able to watch. You're thinking, is this 21st century? 300 naira, how much was it? It was just about less than $2, and that was what somebody couldn't afford. There's different stories. I'm seeing the mother, Mrs. Samuel, who said that anytime she hears people saying that her children, her Chibok girls were not abducted, that she asks herself, does that mean that her daughter never existed? So there were so many pain. Every time you will hear another bombing, another killings, and you hear the details of the people that were being killed. It was so painful. And I tell you, Chinwe, I have never, for me, being at the Bring Back Our Girls movement it's one of the most painful things I've had to do in my life, because it forced me to think about my life that I had put on hold in the bid of survivor. It to put me through the pain that I had to go through. Then I had to now deal the pain of my childhood. I had to deal with that pain. And that was when I used to say that I'm the Chibok girl 21, or was it 23 years ago, or 21 years ago, as of that moment. The whole pain of it, and the fact that the government was uncaring. The government didn't care about what was happening to the movement. And there was so much anguish and so much emotional pain that was going on at the Unity Fountain every day. And I must tell you, there were lots of times I sat down at the Unity Fountain and I just felt like walking out on the road and just dying. And just...
Sorry.
It was bad. We went through hell at the Unity Fountain, coming out every day. I had a 12-year-old daughter and I couldn't imagine terrorists taking her away. I had a painful childhood. I grew up in poverty. I was cancelled. I wasn't seen as a human being. Other parents... Other parents didn't want their children to associate with us. And I knew the pain that the Chibok girls were going through. And I knew that if that was me, nobody was going to do anything. And it forced me to think about all the pain that I had gone through as a child. I knew being mocked, that you had only one clothes in school, sleeping without food, and thinking about all those things. Moments, I tell you, not once, not twice, I think more than 20 times at that Unity Fountain, when the pain was too much, I just felt like walking on the road and just let a car just hit me, let me die. And it's just my faith, being a Muslim and knowing that in the Islamic world, if you commit suicide, it's going to be, it helped. Those are part of the things that helped me back. But Unity Fountain was such a painful thing. And I tell you, there were many people who couldn't stand the emotional this thing. They had to leave. They had to stop coming to Unity Fountain because it was so much pain. And you had a government that didn't care. And up to today, you still have a government that doesn't care. That's not the way it should be.
That's not the way it should be. And you've come to the next few questions, which is,
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. That's why we're having this conversation, because people can go back and see the composed Hajia Aisha Yusufu on interviews, but this is a conversation 7 years with someone who was there with you. We have people who are streaming, who are watching, either who were there with you at the beginning, from the beginning, or who joined later. And it's important that 7 years later, we process this and we look at why are we still here? Because if the girls are not back, whatever brought us this far, we need to hold on to and even get more to sustain us until they're back. And so to hear that this is what how you felt, because I mean, I know some of this because I saw you at Unity Fountain, but I have to be honest that even the depths of this pain, you know, you having to relive your own childhood, your own youth after successfully climbing out of poverty, after putting that behind you. Here it is facing you square in the face
Yeah.
every day for 7 years. So how did you, and I've asked people this along the way during the years, you know, because we all needed coping strategies. You mentioned your faith. How did you throughout the 7 years? And we always remembered, well, if the Chibok parents are going through the hell that they're going through, we will go through it. That's kind of what got us, you know, we would say that to ourselves, we would say that to each other. But really, on a day-to-day basis, what are some of the coping mechanism or coping strategies? Having gone born, you're dealing with your own pain. You know, we don't have mental health professionals. I remember when we would come to the fountain and they said we had like 300 trained psychologists for the entire nation that were still functioning. You know, that hurt me as somebody who was raised by my, you know, a single, you know, she wasn't a single mom, but, you know, a mom who was a counselor. And I remember people would say, well, what is counseling? What is counseling? Well, look at the nation now. Look at Nigeria now, a country with many broken people, walking wounded. You know, we've stuffed so much down. We say we're resilient. We keep on going. But because these girls are not back, our girls are not back, the parents are going through anguish. People in the movement are going through anguish. The Chibok community, I've never seen a community, yes, we say resilient, but so abused. And the communities in the Northeast. And now we're seeing it spread across the country. What kept you going? Like on a day-to-day basis, what would you do? We know you're a woman of faith. You talked about your faith, but what else? What kept you going?
I think what really kept me going was the fact that I can't fail myself the way others had failed me. So as a young girl, I was practically failed by, you know, the society, by the nation. Nobody cared, so many things. And I felt that Chibok girls, no matter what, and that was why it was, I think it was after we had, it was in May, after we had gone to see the chief of defense, staff, that I made a commitment to myself, and I said it at Unity Fountain. And when I said it, people were like, Aisha, are you okay? And I said that I made a commitment that even if it takes 20 years of my life, I'm going to do the issue of Chibok girls. Because for me, is that, you know, when I've been failed, because I said to myself, if I don't make demands for Chibok girls, if I don't see this through, it will be that I had failed myself, the little girl that I was, the way other people had also failed me, where, you know, you needed things, you couldn't see it. Imagine living in a country where you're begging for textbooks to read. I wrote the exam that Chibok girls were writing in 1991. And if I had been taken away in that 1991, my parents would never have been able to say anything, because my parents were poor. And I normally say this, and when I say that when you're poor, you're faceless, nameless, and voiceless. You're not even seen as a human being. That was the devastating part of it. When people talk about canceling culture today, I said the greatest counselor we have is poverty. Poverty cancels you.
Yes.
Let me share a bit of story. You know, recently I started talking about it recently. And that was me following. I went to a school. I was in a government school, always very sick. My parents had to take me out, put me in a private school that they could barely afford. Was in school with a lot of people, you know, children of, you know, the rich and all of that. My father practically used all the monies he had, that from his dividends, he had bought shares when he was working to pay my school fees. And when that money would come, my school fees was always paid, even when we didn't have food to eat. And sometimes I would trek for hours. I will never forget the day I trekked for almost close to 10 hours, and I got to school. And I was walking up into the classroom, and they did the bell. They rang the bell. The school had closed, and my schoolmates came out. They were all laughing at me. They didn't realize the pain I had gone through. There were times I was working for almost 10 hours because my parents couldn't afford to give me, money for transport fare. That's why when people say, Aisha, why are you this passionate? Are you the only one? I feel the pain and I know what it is. And there was parents, this family that they were living in no man's land. I lived in Kwenahudu. So I could take a bus there and then join the children to the school. And
oh dear, you're frozen.
the mom stopped me. And the mom stopped me from following them. And I wondered why. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We lost you for a minute, but you were saying that your friend
I think
stopped
I'm having issues.
you. Okay. Can you hear? Are you with us? Okay. But Aisha, I can hear you. I can see you. Are your streams okay?
Can you
I can
hear
hear
me?
you and see you. Yes, I can hear you and see you.
Okay. So I was having a bit of issues with my network.
Yes.
I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
No
I'm so
problem.
sorry.
No.
Really, if I known this was going to be painful, I probably wouldn't have done it.
I'm
But
sorry. I didn't
it's
intend for
part
it to
of
be
your
painful.
that was what we went through at the Unity Fountain anyway. And so I will follow this girl. So the girl so the mother said I should stop coming to her house. And this my classmate now said, okay, be standing at the road. Don't come to the house, so that when we are leaving the house, we will pick you at the road. And I started doing that. So they will leave the house and they will pick me, the driver and the kid, they will pick me. Sometimes it's pick up, we stay at the back. Sometimes it's just this bus. And then one day the mother came out very early, and then she saw me on the road. And of course, I think she knew that I was waiting for her daughter to take me on. And she really quarreled. I think whether she beat the daughter or something like that. When the daughter told me, she was my school friend. And so when I went I told my father what had happened, what the girl said. And my father said, okay, no problem. We will find a way of being able to always get you to school. And it took me years. I always, as a little girl, I looked at that mother and I always wonder, what did I do to you? All I wanted was a ride with your own child. My parents didn't have. And as an adult, I started thinking, I said, maybe she felt she didn't want me to corrupt her daughter because we were poor and we lived in the wrong part of the town. I came from a ghetto where a lot of people were like hoodlums and all of that. And then this mother sort of like shut me out. But in the midst of that, also there were also mother. There's a friend of mine, Maria Mahmoud. I will never forget that. Her mom was so kind to us. She was so caring. I remember most of the time that I had lunch to eat would be because of the courtesy of Maria Mahmoud's mother. And for me, just thinking about Chibok girls, it just brought that pain that they're going through what I went through. I know what it is going to school, how I was insulted, because all my friends were married off in Kwanahood where I live, and I wanted education, and I kept going, and I refused to give up. And so I knew that was what Chibok girls too were also doing, because in the side where they came from, girl child education wasn't seen as important. So for me, the biggest thing that kept me going, I kept me fight, and I'm a fighter. I can break down. I'm an emotional person. I say to people, I go to all range of emotion. If I'm weak, I will break down and I will cry. And you know that I did that a lot at Unity Fountain. I will cry,
yes.
I will stand up, I will go, and I will go after, and I will not give up.
Yes.
And that's why today I stand and I'll vow that whatever it takes. People say to me, are you not afraid you're going to be killed? I said the worst thing they can do to me, the government can do to me, is either they arrest me or they assassinate me. And the day they kill me is the day that they will give me a voice, because I have a lot of messages out there that people will listen to differently. This life, I mean, I could have been dead a long time ago. If I had had sickness that cost even as much as 13 naira, my parents would not have been able to afford it. And that's what is happening with children of the poor. When you are poor, they forget about them, they're taken away, and nothing happens. It's really painful. So I think one of the things that kept me going was that I can't afford to fail Chibok girls the way others had failed me, and I must stand. And if I failed the Chibok girls, it would mean that I had failed the little girl that was crying for help, and nobody was ready to listen.
Well, Aisha, my sister, I knew this would be emotional. I didn't know we will be this emotional and raw. And I wish I was there to give you a big hug. I'm part of the. Oh. part of
We
this era.
went through hell at Unity Fountain, and then being attacked by people, being attacked by police, coming every day just because we were coming out to the man. We all had all sorts of people had sickness, people had to emotionally, people were broken, people had sickness they didn't have before. Every day you were hearing things, you had to leave your family. I had a 12-year-old at that time. At that moment when I joined from my daughter, who one day said to me, "Mommy, I wish Chibok girls would be brought back so that I will have my mother back." This was a girl that everything, I was like a stay-at-home mom. I was always there for them. I was the first to be at my daughter's school when she was in school to pick her up. We would do our homework together. I'll be there. I got to a place that I was almost the one coming last to come and pick my daughter because we needed to advocate. And then the whole country moved on. We kept saying to them that the fight for Chibok girls is the fight for the soul of Nigeria. We cannot afford not to fight for Chibok girls. If we don't fight for Chibok girls, we're going to get a place whereby the terrorists, we know that they can take everybody with impunity. And isn't that what we are finding today? Isn't that what we're seeing today? 7 years later, parents are going through what Chibok parents went through. Students are being taken away. People are being abducted. The same thing we kept saying. The nation needed to come together to do something, but people felt that it wasn't any of their business because it wasn't their children that were taken away.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you're such a, I call you're like a prophet in some ways because you see ahead, and I want to, as much as I know people need to see this part of you and hear this part of you. I want to take us back a bit, because again, you're one of these eyewitnesses to the changes that have happened, not only with the Chibok girls, with the movement, but also in the nation. And there's a change that happened that a lot of people sometimes attribute to Bring Back Our Girls, and sometimes not. I'm still in 2014. We're still in 2014, and then we see, as you said, we started bearing pain from day one. We started hearing horror stories that nobody should ever have to hear from day one. Gruesome stories, gruesome blood, rape. Let's be honest, everything. We heard it there at Unity Fountain, and we bore it. We bore the public, because a lot of my friends outside the country, they think when they see Black Lives Matters, for instance, they assume that Bring Back Our Girls, being a similar movement, of magnitude, received these sort of open arms from. They assume that we received the welcome that Black Lives Matter receives in the United States. And I tell them, not at all. The vilification, the alienation, the punishment, being sacked, not being hired, being banned from churches, being treated like a pariah, like a non-entity. Like you said, because we identified with the poverty and the poverty and pain of the Chibok girls and the vulnerable people, it was like we also received that canceling that you talk about. We also received that canceling. And I have to say, I'm proud of you in that one of the questions that people ask, what would you tell your former self? Or they tell you, be the person today that you wanted to see when you were a child. And Aisha, you are that person. You are that person. You are reparenting yourself, and you are reparenting so many others by standing in the gap. But I want to take us back to 2014, 2015. Okay, good luck, Jonathan Abele's administration. Warm at first, cold throughout until maybe 6 weeks before the 2015 election. I don't know if you remember, we had a countdown to the 2015 election.
So Chinwe, before we come there, we can't leave that 2014 yet. Let me
let's go. Okay, so talk a bit more about 2014.
The Goodluck Ebele Jonathan administration was never warm. It was cold right from the beginning. It's the other arms of government that were warm. Let me tell you, when we went to see when we went to visit the National Assembly, there was warm reception. When they went to see the NSA, warm reception. in terms of the chief of defense staff, yeah, a bit of this thing, but it was still cordial, it was warm. The movement changed, the anger, and you know, the president hadn't said anything for the first 19 days, and that's what a lot of people forget. They kept on saying, oh, Jonathan was supposed to have brought back those children. Jonathan was supposed to have not had shoe. He's supposed to have known what it is to be poor, and yet he was silent when students were taken away. I had anger at such a human being who kept quiet because his own children were not taken away. And I said to people, my daughter was in the Regent Secondary School when this happened. It's one of the top schools in Abuja. They had protection all the time. If it was in that school that children were taken away, I would not have needed to be on the streets, because there we had, even the vice president's son was in the same school with my daughter. They were classmates with my daughter. And so at the end, when girls were taken away because they were poor, Jonathan refused to say it. People say it's politics. Is it politics that held Jonathan's mouth? Why did he not show empathy? All that was needed for him was empathy. He did nothing. When we decided we were going to march to the president, on our way, that was when the antagonism started at full force. We went there. We had thousands and thousands and thousands of us that were going. They stopped us. And that's where they brought this police commissioner, Umbu, from, it was Rivers State, I think it was.
Mbu, yes.
And they stopped us. And he sent in a delegate. And some of our members wanted to go on and not listen, but our leader said, no, we have to be law-abiding. We have to go by the law. We have to do things the right way. And I tell you, there were people who left the movement because of that, because they felt we should have been aggressive, we should have been violent. Our leader said, no, we cannot get anything by violence. We must be the Nigeria, we must model the Nigeria that we want to see. And it was from there we decided as a movement to build our core values that will be
of course. I wanted to get to that.
Day, when them Doye Okupe, Labaran Maku and Co came to receive us, what did we get? We got a written this address that was read out to us, and they said to us that, oh, why are we coming to make demands on the president? Why are we not marching and making demands on the terrorists? That in other countries like Afghanistan, Syria, they mentioned some others say that when things like this happen, that the citizens go to the terrorists and not to the government. That instead of saying bring back our girls, we should be saying release our girls. That was what they said to us in that statement. And it was so shocking. The coldness from all of them when we did that. And so we went back, right? We went back to Unity Fountain after the meeting. We didn't press on. They stopped us. Police came out en masse to stop us and everything. And today I see people talking about the fact that, oh, they are stopping protesters. Protesters were stopped during Jonathan. We went through hell during Jonathan. There were times we were afraid the government were coming to kill us. The terrorists were coming to kill us. There were times we didn't even know where we were going to meet. We had to send out the meeting location 30 minutes to the protest because we were going to be attacked. We had to do all of these things in the streets of Abuja. They chased us from Unity Fountain. When we came, after meeting with the president, we came back the following day. Guess what? There were thousands of protesters wearing red and saying, release our girls. The same message that the presidency had given to us when we went to see them. And they came in, a lot of them. And so what we simply did, our leader said, no confrontation, we will not fight anybody. We will simply move. The Unity Fountain is a big place. We simply moved to another side of Unity Fountain. The following day when we came again, they had occupied their other side and the side we moved to. And that's how we kept moving to the Unity Fountain until the day that the government brought in talks. NSAS protest was not the first time that government used talks to beat people up. Was not the first time that police were supervising talks. We sat down at Unity Fountain. Talks were brought in this Abuja mass transit. They were brought into Unity. Before the talks came, we had these old women. They brought them, some of them were not selling ugu there. They will be doing now, they will be going around and chanting Holy Ghost fire, Holy Ghost fire. And then when they are done, the Muslim part will come and be praying that we are Shaitan, Allahu Akbar and all of that. They were doing all sorts of things around us. Our leaders said, do not engage them. Do not talk to them. And we kept that on. When they kept doing that, there were moments we felt they were going to attack, but we just stood our ground. We just keep chanting. What are we demanding? Bring back our girls. What are we demanding? Bring back our girls. What are we demanding? Bring back our girls. And so when they brought in these talks in this their Abuja mass transit, they came in that day. we were all there. The police started supervising them, and the police said to them, take away people. And I think they even took away your phone, or broke, was it your phone?
They tried to take away my phone. They broke chairs over my head. They broke chairs over, a thug came and tried to take it. But the rage that I had, because you remember, that wasn't the first day. This was a build-up. They had come 3 days first. They sent the women, then the police were there. Then the third day, they released these thugs who tried to physically harm us. And that was only in May 2014. So you're right. We can't leave.
That was May 2014.
The next a month after the girls were abducted. That was May, if I'm not mistaken, around the first.
It was in May 2014. And many people have forgotten. Either they looked the other way, or they forget, or they just simply try to be I don't even know what to call it. They just try to be clever by half and not
feign ignorance, like it didn't happen.
Exactly.
They broke the international press.
When the talks came in, the police now started to. The first thing they said to them was take away all the cameras of the journalists.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, they took away the cameras of the journalists. The police were telling them what to do and take away people's cameras this day. And they even Ibrahim, popularly known as Morocco, his arm, they dislocated his arm. But one of the things that our members did was that the men formed a circle around.
I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
And they held themselves up. They all had there. On that day, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili was there. Her brother, Onyeka, was there. Her twins were there. And I remember when we were doing that this year, I could hear her, but because one of them was so angry because some of them were coming at his mom, with all this thing, and he was trying to engage. I could hear her calling his name. And the way it is as a mother, when you know your child is out here. So when I see people talking about, you come out, you don't protest with your child. She was there on that day, her children. She has 3 sons. Only one wasn't around because that one was in school then. But
her brother was there. Yes, he was always there.
Her 2 sons were there. Even after he came back, when he finished, they were always with us at Unity Fountain. And I could hear her voice when she was calling him, stay, don't engage them, just focus on this. So you could see the fear of a mother. Knowing that your child was in harm's way. And we all stood, and I remember standing close to Dr. Obi, and I said to her, look, if any of them come in and they start attacking us, there's no way we are not going to fight back. We're going to fight back. Because for me, I grew up in the ghetto. I grew up fighting. We didn't have food to eat. We had to fight. I'm the firstborn in my family. The boy that we had is the 5th boy. So I had to be the one to protect my siblings and fight. Even when I was in the university, we would drop down and fight. And I'm not afraid of death. If it comes, it will come. In the house, I was the set up and jump. If it go happen, may it happen. But the team is anyhow, we will not back down. I kept saying, they just say we should keep saying, bring back, what are we demanding? Bring back our girls. Then we were defiant. And at the end of the day, they broke our chairs, they broke this thing. Morocco's hand was dislocated and everything before they go. That's so people know. And we got to a place where we had to be moving from one place to the other in Abuja.
They didn't just break our chairs. Aisha, let me interject, because you said they took away cameras. They didn't just take away the cameras. They went and they broke the cameras of the international and local press. It wasn't just snatching them. They broke them so that they were irretrievably repaired. I remember at Reuters, remember the guy with the big afro? That they broke. I remember all of them were just looking stunned, because I'm sure no matter where they were sent in their reportage, they never faced anything like that. So I think it's important to remember that not only did the government unleash thugs on us, even the free press, the fourth arm, it was really bad. It was really bad. And that was
that also, Chinwe, was the fact that even citizens were antagonistic to our members. So the moment you have, that reminds me of something. The moment you have a BBOG shirt, you are harassed. The moment you had a BBOG badge, you were being harassed on the streets, you were being talked to anyhow when you went to places. So initially when that was going on, members of BBOG would say that, because they were wearing this Big Black Our Girls t-shirt, they got treated this way and way. And I always and I kept saying that, I wasn't feeling that, I wasn't treated that way. I wasn't feeling that vibe. But wait a moment, Chinwe. It took me time for me to realize what was happening. So I wasn't
I
feeling
felt
the
it.
vibe and all of those things and everything. I remember one time I had to go and speak at an event that was, I think, late in 2014. In was it this model school, Metama Model School? There was this, I can't remember which of the, one of these private universities that they were having some summer, I think it was the church, I can't remember which of the churches was having a summer camp for little students, and they invited me there. I went there, I spoke, I had my hijab on, and then when I finished, I needed to go and pray before going to Unity Fountain. And I found the place, and the one teacher was like, she was so antagonistic. She didn't want me to pray. Whatever, it's people like you that are throwing bombs and all of that. I'm like, are you okay? So on that day, I realized something. I realized that while my colleagues at Bring Back Our Girls movement were feeling the antagonism from people because whenever they had on the t-shirt, I already felt that because I always had the hijab. So I wasn't feeling different because over the time, because of my hijab, after 9/11, I started wearing hijab in 1992. And even when I started covering, even my parents didn't like it. My people around me didn't like, what is the meaning of this? You know, it was in the 90s, no, people wearing the hijab wasn't common and everything. Like, what's the meaning of this and all of that? So I got used to being treated differently. I mean, I've traveled with you, Chungwe. You know how it is.
Yes, I remember.
As you're traveling with me, you're going to face different things because of the hijab. So I realized that it was because of my hijab that I got treated that way anyway. So I wasn't feeling the extra treatment because of when you had BBOG on it. But in 2014, I can't remember when, was it August or September? I can't remember. My son came back. My son started schooling abroad in 2013. And so he was in UK when he found out that Chibok girls were abducted. And let me tell you how my son found out. My son was in class. He said they were in physics class and they were just being goofy, you know, children refusing to listen to the teacher very well and everything. And one of the teachers, and the teacher now looked at them and said, you know, you guys don't know how lucky you are. Our children in Nigeria have just been abducted. About 300 children in Nigeria have just been abducted. And everybody zoomed on my son. They knew he was Nigerian, proud Nigerian for that. And they looked at him. And my son said, no. Wow. My son said, he told the teacher, no, that can't happen, not in Nigeria. And he said immediately after the class, he went into the IC2 room and he went on the computer and he checked, he Googled. He actually saw that it happened. And in the evening of that day, my son called me. You know, we talked every day and he said, Mommy, what's going on? And that was how he found out about Chibok girls. So that was how my son found out about Chibok girls. And there was this thing that they went to. I remember showing the video. I think he did a video. I don't know whether I still have that video. I ever tweeted it. I hope I have it somewhere. He sent me a video. They were at the sea. Their school was at Norwich, between Norwich and Norfolk. So they were at the beach. And then he wrote something that bring back our girls. He did the hashtag and wrote bring back our girls. And that was, I think that was the first time that I talked about at the Unity Fountain, that I talked about my son and the fact that my son is dyslexic. And I said to them, for my dyslexic son to be able to spell bring back our girls correctly, that's making mistake. It meant a lot. It took it personal. And every day my son would call me, and even when he came to Nigeria, he would always ask of Mama Obi. That's the way he calls her. Hi, Mama Obi. You know, the most, I don't know whether I should say it's the most annoying thing or the most lovable thing. He doesn't ask of me, how are you? He doesn't ask of me first. It's Mama Obi. Hi, it's Mama Obi. It's when he is sure that Mama Obi is okay ahead. Then you will not remember, okay,
then he can check on other people.
About you? How are you? And so when my son came on holiday and he was returning back to his school in UK, he wore the Bring Back Our Girls t-shirt. Do you know he was harassed at the airport?
Yes, I remember you saying so. Yes,
this was a 15-year-old boy, going back to his school, wearing a t-shirt of his schoolmates that were also taken. And I see some people who say, oh, where are your children? Our children have been marching. My son started marching on the streets of Nigeria when he was 15. He didn't need to march. He could have afforded to look the other way. He wasn't even in this country. My daughter started marching at the age of 12. On that t-shirt, this woman harassed my son. It was such a terrible story. And for a boy who is dyslexic, who sometimes has so much anxiety, in terms, especially when you're even speaking fast, he said his capacity to comprehend what you're saying, it is delayed, and then he's going through so much, he begins to have panic attack. They harassed him at the airport because of the fact that he was wearing Bring Back Our Girls t-shirt. And today I see people who refused to accept that abduction happened, who were heinous, and they were trying to absorb the last administration. But like we've always said at the Bring Back Our Girls movement, we are administration neutral. It doesn't matter who is in office. All we care about is that Chibok girls should be rescued and they all should be accounted for.
Absolutely. It was a non-partisan issue. It's a non-partisan issue. And just to, I was not trying to say that the seat of, or the president himself was warm, because I don't think we ever engaged with President Goodluck Jonathan. But I did understand what you meant by different arms of his government were receptive. Let's not even call it warm. They were receptive early on, and then very pernicious the very following month. That's why I keep stressing May. There was an about face, and then there was an attack on us as 1 month after the abductions. Instead of that aggression to the terrorists and pursuing them to get the girls back, we were the ones that were the brunt of frustration for that administration. So yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So are there any other things? So we're still in 2014 and we're an hour and a half into our conversation, 7 whole years to recount. Is there anything in 2014 that stuck out to you before we move on to 2015? Before we move on to 2015, because I think it's important to see the before and after.
Yeah. In 2014, the things that stuck out for me were the repeated killings and abduction that were taken on. The Potiskum killing, I'll never forget that.
Potiskum,
the boys that were killed in the assembly while they were at the assembly, and then a terrorist came in wearing uniform, disguising as wearing uniform, and then the terrorists just took them. Some of them apprehended that terrorist, so that was why there was even a bit of lessening of the casualty. It probably would have been worse, and 48 students were killed, and the Nigerian government never said anything. They didn't do anything, and the president went on to do his declaration without even standing. Oh God, President Jonathan was heartless. He went on with his declaration, and I think a few weeks after that, he lost his aunt or sister or something like that. And then he stopped a particular activity he was doing. So that means he knew that when death happens, there's a need to respect the dead, and just stop certain things. There was also what was it called now? The Gumsuri women and children that were taken away December 14th, 2014.
Right.
And when we kept asking, the military kept quiet. They refused to say anything about it, and they just were saying up until February, when there was that postponement of election, 6 weeks postponement of election, and then the government they said that the people that had been rescued, the 185 women and children from Gumsiri were part of it. So these are also key moments that say, and then I'll never forget the 1 month commemoration. None of us ever thought it was going to happen. We thought the children would be back before 1 month of Chibok girls abduction. So by May 14th, that April, it was like unbelievable. And I remember also after the 1 month, the members simply said, no way, we are not going to have a second month. No, we are not doing a 2 month. And actually we refused to. We said, no way, we are not going to do anything like that. And this thing just started coming. Before we know what was happening, we were doing 100 days where we were having the CD, and then just carrying banners that say pain, anguish, the different emotions that we're going through. I remember also, members being thrilled. You'll be driving, you see somebody, cars will be following you and stuff like that. You just had to go into sort of like, if you're driving home, the number of times that I had to do detour, and my kids will be like, I say, no, I'm not, I would rather go around and try to lose certain cars that were trailing you. And the threats that kept coming from all angles is just unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And people didn't, because we were so focused, we didn't even have time to process what was happening.
Yes.
Did this happen to you? Okay, we move on to the next, the next day. Focus on the next day. What do we have to do? What press release has to go out? Who do we have to see? What embassy do we have to go to? It was just activity after activity. There was no time to think about to really process or you know, it was everything was at a snap minute. Do you remember when, I mean, you mentioned this, but there were bomb threats. I don't know if people
Yeah,
realize that
people did. There were bomb threats. We had to get to it. I remember the one at Maitama where somebody apparently had left something, and then we all had to move out,
yes.
and then they had to bring in, is it the bomb, whatever detonation squad to now check it and
Yes.
sure. And you know, every month we would do, like, we had a security team. That was one thing I forgot to mention in the teams that we had. That was very key, security team. So they'll go ahead and check every day before we come in. They'll come and do like a walkover,
sweep.
check,
Yes.
a sweep. Yeah, that's the word. Sweep over Unity Counter or wherever we were going to meet to ensure. And they were always there, different people. And you know one thing, we had a lot of moles from the DSS. Oh Lord have mercy.
It's true. Yes.
You know, I'm just remembering what there was one. I used to give her a ride every day in my car.
Wow.
Myself, I mean, there were myself, Roslyn, Fisayo, we were all in the car, because when we dropped, Unity Fountain was a place, let me just backtrack a little bit. Unity Fountain was a place where we all met different economic status, different education, different tribe, different religion.
It was really a microcosm of Nigeria.
Yes,
it was a microcosm of Nigeria.
There were people from PDP that were part of us. There were people from APC. There were people from other parties. So it was Nigerians coming together and just focusing on the singularity of purpose, which was bring back our address, and we didn't care about any of our divide. I remember we said that whatever you have, whatever your political affiliation, or whatever, keep it at the gate. And when you come inside the Unity Fountain, it's all about Chibok girls, and nobody was allowed to make any political statements. And even though some people were, and I find people today talking about that BBOG was political, it was what? Even the day that there was this meeting they were doing, Hadiza Bala Osman had to come. She was coming from a meeting, APC meeting. As soon as she was coming, she had to tell her people, no, you have to take off your wrappers or whatever. They were wearing their party wrappers. This place is a non-partisan. There were people from PDP and all of that. We all converged together. And there were some members who didn't even have money. They trekked. There was this Baba for years. Baba,
I remember.
We'll give him a ride. So I gave some people rides. We'll drop people off and everything. And this DSS lady, I was always giving her a ride, and I would drop her off until one day, I think it was one of our members that had gone to another event, and they were actually in their DSS thing doing things. And we now realized that she was one of those DSS. And when they came, she was outed. And that was the last time she ever came to Unity Fountain. So you had a lot of all the security people, and Marilyn Oga calling us all sorts of names. I mean, Jonathan called us terrorists. He called us psychological terrorists. He said,
he did.
Terrorists. DSS said that we had cells that we were whether was this cells they call it, we were terrorist cells, we're going to do different things. There was so much attack from DSS, from the government, from the police, and it was crazy. It was crazy, all because of what? All because we were demanding for Chibok. And there were some of our members actually who lost their jobs, some who had to resign, some who the businesses they were doing, some of them, maybe they were government contractors or all of that, they were threatened, they were stopped. Some, it's either they had to stop the movement or they had to lose all of those businesses that they had. It was quite crazy. Actually, when one of my devices has gone down, just give me a moment. I'm going to get a charger. Just bring in a charger.
Okay, but we're going to even start rounding up. I've been given a signal. We're going to start rounding up. I think this is going to have to happen. So we're going to do installments. This is installment 1. Aisha, do you promise? This is,
anytime. Because the story of BBOG, you can't just say there's so many. We've not even left 2014.
We haven't, and that's fine.
In January 14, 2016, when the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, decided to tell Chibok parents that he had reached the peak of his career as a military man and as a civilian.
Wait, you know what? Wait, let's ask people to please come back, and there's going to be chapter 2. So we've discussed the Jonathan.
Emotion. I'm so sorry.
No. This is what we need. We don't. You're not able to be like this on any other platform. This is a homegrown platform, and it's 7 years. You're allowed to be emotional. You're allowed to be frank. You're allowed to be forthright, which you are anyway. You're allowed to be you. Hajia. So this is why we love you. This is why we welcome you, and this is why you're, the perfect person to kick this off. But what we'll have to do is, I think, if we can do this again very soon and talk about the next installment, because what we've really discussed, we've thrashed out the beginning, the Jonathan years, of BBOG, and we're just about to get into. If there's any other thing for 2014, let's round that up, and then we will have another session. Can I get you on for another session?
Yeah,
We get you.
anyway.
Okay, sorry that we'll have to put you through some of this again, but I think it's also cathartic to get it out. We've all been holding so many things in for 7 long years, and so this may be helpful in more ways than one, by the grace of God. So if we can just round up 2014. I wanted to take us into 2015 because the before and after is very interesting, but we'll have to do that in another time. What else, as we go into, you've mentioned all these atrocities that BBOG, people forget that we noted, we contacted the government about. It wasn't just Chibok. It wasn't just about Chibok girls, even as early as 2014, because these atrocities were happening around the country. You talked about Potiskum. We did commemorations even about Potiskum. We talked about some of the other happenings. With the women that were abducted and returned. And then I can't remember it's 2014 or 2015, that we were told that thousands of people had been released, literally thousands of abducted people.
That was 2015 when they started this, when they did the 6 weeks postponement to elect. So let me give you the interesting thing about that. So with the Gumsuri women and children, we didn't have names. And we kept saying to the people in the community, can you provide names for us? I mean, I think today when the people will come and say, oh, bring back our girls was only about Chibok. No, that's a lie. It was a symbol. I kept saying it was a symbol for those that were abducted before and after them. When letters were written, we were looking for Borno elders to come and sign letters to be sent.
I remember.
All of them, they refused. They didn't want to sign anything. We asked for the names to be considered women and children, and we couldn't get them. So the military was waiting. So when the 6 weeks postponement of elections started, they started saying they were releasing abductees, thousands of them, and then they immediately said the 185 were part of them, that they never accepted that we're missing. And of course, there was no way we could
verify
any of these things. And so, but you guess what was happening? The military always had round figures. It was either 1,500 had been released,
I remember that,
1,000 or 3,000, until we said to them, why are they always round figures? And then the next thing they started saying something like 2001 have been released.
Yes.
It was just so funny and just so annoying.
And sad, just very irritating.
We've not even started unpacking 2014. One of the things, our chance that we have, what are we demanding? Bring back our girls now and alive. What are we asking for? The truth, nothing but the truth, when they were lying to us. What do we want? Our girls back now
and alive.
What do we want? Result from the rescue operation. And they said it was rescue operation, and there was never any rescue operation.
Absolutely.
And also in that 2014 was when we went to see the ambassador, the Chadian ambassador to Nigeria. When they said they had paid some money, there was going to be negotiation or something like that, ceasefire and everything, and it all turned out to be a lie. They said it was the Chadian government that was doing that. And when we went to the ambassador, he said he knew nothing about this.
I remember that day.
To go and meet him and do that. So there were a lot of lies and a lot of military that were running away. I will never forget our military men running away into Cameroon, being driven by terrorists. That was one of those moments that really humbled us as a nation, as a movement, where we saw our soldiers fleeing away from the terrorists, and it was so painful to watch. And then the government said it was tactical maneuver, and here we were waiting for a rescue operation. We realized there was no rescue operation, and we started saying we want our girls back now and alive. There's so many things anyway, Chinwe. I think we just have to wait in 2014. There's so many. It's really sad.
It's really sad, but it's very interesting and I think informative to unpack all of this. It's because, we had an event one day, within an hour, but when we like I said, this is the time to a bit of reflection. We've never really allowed ourselves to reflect in this way, because with the girls not being back, we need to look back at what worked what we've done and continue to draw strength from that, because as many of us have said, we're not going until the girls are back. And that is why we're doing this. And for those who have woken up to the truth that these girls, our girls, are still missing, 112 of them, we have them by names. People have continued to ask how they can get involved from around the world. That is why we're doing this retrospective. We're not just navel gazing for our own selves. This is really, what have we done? What do we still need to do? And what worked, what didn't work, what sustained us? Because we can see that this administration has not done anything to bring back the 112, and that there are still abductions happening beyond Chibok, beyond Borno, around the country. And what are we going to do as a nation? So let's bottle it for now. Leave it there for now. And I want to thank you so much. I wish I could give you one of those wonderful bear hugs that you give to us, hugging you from afar, because I know neither of us anticipated that it would even go in this direction, but I'm really did. I'm really grateful to you for being so.
I am not going to have done this interview.
No, that's not. No, you had to do it. You had to do it.
Some memories are just too painful. But yeah,
They're
we have to.
But they need to get out, because we there's more work to do. It's sad, It's interesting to say, okay, we leave it in the past, but we can't leave it in the past, and we can't leave it buried, because we're the ones that will continue to carry on. And so as much as I'm sorry, I know it also needed to happen. So in a way, I'm grateful to God, I'm grateful to you, I'm grateful to your family that's going to hug you now and take you and comfort you. And I'm also grateful to those who are watching, who have seen the images of you in the face of the police. They see you, fist up. They see the fighter in you. They're ready, you've boxed all of us, even at the fountain, But this, it's a bit selfish of me. I've always said to people, and I think I've mentioned this to you, that there's a side of Aisha Yesufu that people haven't seen, and it's a very loving, compassionate, real side. And it needed to. Maybe it's come out on other interviews, but it needed to come out now at 7 years, because you have the benefit, the wisdom, the experience of doing this for 7 years. And you're allowed to feel whatever you want, because our girls are not allowed to feel and express. So we have to express what we've absorbed from their parents, what we've absorbed from the Chibok community, what we've absorbed from one another. And by virtue of all of that absorption, what we've absorbed from them, it has to come out, because it's like you've always said, injury to one is injury to all. So if this is healing in any way, shape, or form, by the grace of God, they will also be healed and strengthened. Amen. Because we're a body. We're a body. So that's it. So thank you so much, Hajia. I'm just so grateful to you. We will be back, I guess, another day to be announced. We'll put it on the social media handles. Thank you for lending us your social media handles and streaming this live. And I much love to you and the family until we speak again in this platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Well done, sister.
Oh, well done to you too. Thank you, everybody, for sticking it out and listening. We will be back. We are not done. You can see that this story is beyond all of us. And so we will have Hajia Aisha Yesufu back for another installment of this citizens engagement. We are both promising. We've promised things before. We said that we would not leave our girls. So this, when I was asked to do this, I said, it's a small thing that you ask. For me to be able to speak to Aisha on Zoom, not a big deal. We're going to speak about our girls and unpack what we can unpack and see how we can continue to sustain ourselves as a movement, just emotionally, strategically, and all that's entailed with this. So thank you once again. Thank you, everybody. And we are signing off of our Zoom chat with Hajia Yesufu. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye. I want to say love you. Bye.
Love you too.
Love you too. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to that. I'm so sorry. It was a bit emotional, but of course, Chibok girls issue have always been emotional for me. I know what it is growing up as a person and being absolutely, feeling, oh, You know, I've been trying to use my hand. I'd forgotten my computer is not touch screen. Just going through all of this and I'm feeling the pain. So it's quite, I'm an emotional person and I'm never ashamed of that. When it's time to cry, I will cry. When it's time to fight, I will fight. Whatever range of emotion, I should show it out there. And for me, I will never give up on Chibok girls because that's who I was when I was a little girl. And for the poor, I will always be there because I know what it is to be poor. I know what it is to be cancelled by poverty. And every Nigerian life was matter. And one of the things we see at the Bring Back Our Girls movement is that no Nigerian is more Nigerian than any Nigerian. Thank you.